Guys? Uh, Wanted to look at Bitcoin after the first debate and really talk about the direction we're headed towards because the next few months are going to be very important for Bitcoin. I think it's going to be very telling as to what direction it's headed, and I think we definitely want to pay attention. So, before I get into anything, none of this is financial advice. So please do your own due diligence. I'm simply offering my insight and my opinion as to what I think is going to happen in the markets using technical analysis. Doesn't mean I'm right, doesn't mean I'm wrong, but please do your own research. Past performance is not an indicator of future performance. I'm not a financial advisor, I'm not a professional. It's all simply my opinion for informational purposes only, all right? So now that's out the way, let's really dive into what's happened with Bitcoin. As I was watching the debate, I saw that, it was a complete shit show, and I didn't think we were going to get much out of that debate. So I wanted to see, well, maybe other debates have been shit shows too. So, we had the 2008 crisis in one, we had a Iraq war in another one, we had the dot-com bubble melting down. So there's always been periods of uncertainty the last 20 years, and I wanted to see how markets have performed after first debates. So I looked at gold, stocks, and Bitcoin. And just from very general standpoint, it's important to keep in mind that stocks after presidential elections have gone on bull markets. They've continued on 4-year bull markets in 6 out of the last 8 elections, I want to say. Gold has been a little up and down. I think gold's been up and down. Bitcoin is something that's very interesting to me, and that's kind of why I wanted to talk about it today. Bitcoin's considered a risk asset, understandably, but it's also been associated as a store of value, as a hedge against risk in markets and our, monetary economic system. So there's this huge debate as to where to classify Bitcoin. Is it a risk asset? Is it something that's eventually going to be integrated into the world and something that people use as a safety hedge? Or whether it's just going to be a failed experiment. We really don't know yet until we see the mass adoption. So we're kind of sitting around waiting to see what happens in the world. But when we look at Bitcoin after the last 2 presidential debates, it has performed considerably well. Part of the reason is due to the halving. Another portion is that, Bitcoin showed a very strong relationship with stocks. And during the last 2 presidential elections, we've seen stocks continue to new highs in really what's been the biggest bull market in US history. And Bitcoin's performed considerably well over that next year. Within a year, Bitcoin's topped out. It's placed a long-term top after presidential elections. And, the first time in 2012, after the debate on September 20, I want to say it was October 1st. It was like October, that first week of October 2012. All the way to, December time of 2013, we saw Bitcoin climb close to 9,000%. So a 90-fold move. Let that sink in. A lot of money was made. Even if you just hodled, you made even more. Point being, Bitcoin performed very well. In 2016, I think the debate was on September 26th. It was like the last week of September. And Bitcoin, after that, went up over that next year up until that December 2017 that a lot of us remember. Bitcoin went up over 3,000%. Now, this time around, what's going to happen? I think the safe assumption is that Bitcoin's probably going to climb at least 1,000%, which would take us to 100,000 over the next year, or much higher. So it could be a minimum 10x move. I think we're looking at a minimum 10x move if Bitcoin does end up topping out, placing a long-term top sometime next December in 2021. Could be sooner, could be later, but usually it happens, every 4 years in December. That's what we've noticed. Bitcoin places this generational top every 4 years in December time. But what's also something we need to take into consideration, and something we've talked about a lot on this channel, is Bitcoin's never gone through a bear market before. Bitcoin also lost key trend lines, which from a longer time frame kind of make it bearish. Bitcoin has yet to display any type of negative correlation to stocks. It's usually when stocks do well, Bitcoin does well. When stocks sell off, as we've seen in 2000 in March 2020 during this last liquidation crisis, this huge sell-off we saw in Bitcoin, stock sold off and Bitcoin followed. In 2018, another good example, we saw a huge market sell-off, and it was over 50% move, and stock sold off quite a bit towards the end of 2018, and so did Bitcoin. So during the liquidation crisis, we've also seen that when people are de-risking in the markets, by people I mean hedge funds, and the big money, when it starts de-risking out of markets, typically Bitcoin is an asset that falls a lot. So it's very possible that Bitcoin doesn't do this simply because we're going into some kind of really severe recession, depression, or whatever you want to call it. So what's going to be really important is over the next few months for Bitcoin to display strength, especially towards closing this year. If Bitcoin can hold 10,000 or even edge up and start being around 12, 13, that's going to be tremendously bullish for Bitcoin. There's going to be a lot of strength going into the next year, and I think that then we have to consider the possibility that even if stocks do perform poorly and Bitcoin showing that type of strength, that we're seeing that decoupling that we've talked about for Bitcoin, and that Bitcoin's probably going to do what it does after every halvening, and that's really make a monster move up. Now, if stocks sell off and we start to see really a weakness in Bitcoin where it starts trending downwards towards these $6,000, $7,000 levels, I would say that 7,000 is going to be a key support area to hold coming down here. But if we start trending down here with stocks and the market goes into some type of recession and Bitcoin fails to kind of move up, then and it's going to be quite obvious because you can see a week, 2 weeks, 3 week period where stocks are down and maybe Bitcoin's up 10, 15, 20%. That's going to be the sign where you're decoupling. So, it's not waiting 6 months and seeing like, okay, stocks are down here, Bitcoin's at 15,000, and it's no, it'll be pretty apparent when stocks are selling off and Bitcoin's going up. So that's something you really want to that's something I want to pay attention to. I don't know if you do, but something take into consideration, do your own research on it. But that being said, what do you guys think? Let me know in the comment section below if you like the content and you want to see more, especially as we get into this election, and I think a lot of people are calling for a very severe recession, depression. I actually kind of hold that same opinion. I think something big's coming. Don't know what, but I think it's going to be bad, and we're going to have to weather through that. And that kind of gives me a bearish outlook on Bitcoin. But the charts, the data, what's typically happened during previous elections has been very bullish. But then again, we've never seen Bitcoin go through a bear market. I sound like I really sound like I'm just repeating myself over and over again, but I really want to emphasize how important that relationship is. If stocks go into a bear market and Bitcoin's de-risking with stocks as they sell off, then you could expect very, very low Bitcoin prices, as we've talked about on this page, probably something close to those lows in, March and early, late 2018, early 2019, and perhaps a lot lower if we're in a multi-year bear market, which is what it kind of looks like right now, because we've had the higher low. Well, we've had a higher low, but over the long term, we've had a higher high, a low, and then a lower high. Sorry, and now we're waiting to see, are we going to get a higher high here, or are we going to break down and start seeing a lower low, which could be the final low for Bitcoin before it really starts climbing up over the next several years. And I think there's a very strong case for that. If stocks go down for about a year or two, Bitcoin follows suit, and then it bottoms out with stocks and it starts outperforming. I think that's something that's very possible. That's kind of the thesis that I hold, but I'm ready to change it, and I think these next few months are going to be important. So buckle up, guys. It's going to get fun. It's going to get exciting. And yeah, we'll see you next video. All right. You guys have a good week.